Hello and welcome back to another episode of Hockey Talking. My name is Clay. Thank you for tuning in. Today we're going to talk about the Blackhawks goaltending situation heading into this odd offseason and eventually this odd next season. It's going to be a point of emphasis considering that as of right now, the Blackhawks do not have a starting caliber goaltender signed on for next year. Now, the word on the street is that the Blackhawks have offered Corey Crawford a one-year deal worth $3.5 million, which is, of course, a step down from his previous contract, which had a cap hit of $6 million. But that sounds about right to me for the Blackhawks in what they're going to be able to afford in terms of a starting goaltender. If you look at the fact that this was a pandemic-ravaged year, revenues have been down, it's going to be a flat cap, and then you look at where the Blackhawks are with their salary cap, which I know I still need to do a video on, and I promise you I will do a video on. But you take into account all those things, in my opinion, it seems like the Hawks really are only going to have about $4 million to get a starting goaltender. So 3.5 sounds about right to me in terms of essentially a first offer for the Blackhawks. Now, Corey Crawford may come back and want maybe a little bit more money or maybe more term than just 1 year. That's just going to be negotiations. But for right now, that seems like the starting point that we're going to go with. But let's take a look at the Blackhawks options beyond Corey Crawford. Now, this is going to be a very interesting offseason for goaltenders. A lot of big names who are either unrestricted or restricted free agents. It's going to be interesting to see where they sign and for how much money, especially in this pandemic year. I would expect most of the restricted free agents on this list to re-sign with their current teams, except for the Pittsburgh duo. The Penguins are not going to be bringing back both Matt Murray and Tristan Jarry. I would expect the Penguins to keep Tristan Jarry, re-sign him, and then either trade Matt Murray or let a team offer sheet for him. If, for example, the Blackhawks would offer sheet for Matt Murray, and we're going to assume that they're at the $4 million kind of limit that I said earlier, that means that the Blackhawks, if the offer sheet is accepted, would have to give up a second-round pick, and they do have their second-round pick this year. Funny enough, it is the Pittsburgh Penguins' second-round pick, so that'd be kind of funny. But you can either kind of offer sheet like that, or you could trade for the player and then sign him afterwards. Second-round pick, you might need to give a little bit more than that, depending on how much or how highly you feel of Matt Murray in this instance. But if we remove the restricted free agents, we'll notice this list gets a little bit leaner. Some big names do still pop up, though. Braden Holtby, Jacob Markstrom, Robin Lehner, probably the big three for me, the guys who will be the most sought after in free agency. However, it seems like Robin Lehner probably won't even make it to free agency. It seems like Vegas is really pushing hard to sign him long-term, which then begs the question of what's going to happen to Marc-Andre Fleury, who has 2 years left of his $7 million deal. We'll see there. But other than that, Braden Holtby, it seems like his time in Washington is done, so he'll probably be testing the waters. And then Jacob Markstrom, Vancouver, that saga is going to be very interesting because Vancouver doesn't have a whole lot of cap space. Are they going to be able to make some moves to free some up? And if so, are they going to be willing to throw that money towards Jacob Markstrom? Or will they completely have their trust in their young Thatcher Demko? That's going to be an interesting saga to keep your eye on. However, all three of those players, I feel like, are out of reach for the Blackhawks in terms of they're not going to be able to afford them with $4 million. So if we narrow this list down even more to just the guys who I would deem as affordable for the Blackhawks, you got Matt Murray, Mike Smith, Thomas Greiss, Corey Crawford, Brian Elliott, Anton Khudobin, and Cam Talbot. Now Matt Murray may be a little bit of a stretch, but he had a down year, and you might be able to see him take a one-year deal for the $3.5 to $4 million range that his previous cap hit was at. I wouldn't be surprised to see that, especially in this offseason. Other than that, Mike Smith, he's 38 years old. Will he continue to play? Probably, but do you want him? I don't think I would if I'm the Blackhawks. I mean, he's not like an upgrade all that much over, Corey Crawford, who you could just try and sign instead. Thomas Greiss and Anton Khudobin, those two are currently playing in the conference finals right now with their respective teams. I would not be surprised if both of them re-sign with those teams, regardless of how their teams do or finish in these playoffs. Whether that be, for a little bit larger pay grades or maybe just the same amount of money that they're currently making, it remains to be seen. But I wouldn't be surprised if both those teams put an effort to re-signing both those players to keep their goalie tandems intact. And so with all of that said, it just seems like right now, looking at the free agency goaltender situation in terms of the players out there who are starter level, the Blackhawks' best bet is Corey Crawford. Now, with that said, let's take a quick look at who the Blackhawks have currently as goaltenders in their organization. As I mentioned before, they do not have a starting caliber goaltender signed for next year. Corey Crawford, currently an unrestricted free agent. Then you have Malcolm Subban, who was the backup to finish the year. He is a restricted free agent. It'll be interesting to see if they re-sign Malcolm Subban or go with a guy like Colin Delia or Kevin Lankinen to back up, hopefully, Corey Crawford next year. But in the system, in the minors, as prospects, you have Colin Delia, Kevin Lankinen, Matt Tompkins. They're all signed for at least next year. And then beyond that, as prospects, Ivan Nalimov and then Dominic Bassi, who was just drafted this past year, are kind of rounded it out. They have not been signed to pro contracts. There's not really a goaltender here besides Corey Crawford who I see can really be a starting goaltender in the NHL. Now, obviously, Dominic Bassi is very young, and he may very well end up being a starting goaltender. We'll just have to wait and see. Now, Corey Crawford didn't become a starter until he was like 25 years old. So Dominic Bassi still has plenty of time, but obviously he's not going to be a starter come next season. So Blackhawks, it seems like their best options right now, especially with their contract situation, are going to have to figure out a way to get these groups of goaltenders basically as their goaltenders for next year. And of course, the biggest piece to this puzzle is re-signing Corey Crawford. Now, it seems like Crawford understands the situation that there's a flat cap and that this offseason is not going to be good for free agents trying to get big money. It seems like this is going to be an offseason where we're going to see a lot of bridge deals. It seems like Crawford understands where the Blackhawks are at with their salary cap as well, and that if he wants to stay in Chicago, he's probably going to have to take a pay cut. Well, he's going to have to take a pay cut. It's not even really a question. It seems like he wants to stay in Chicago. At this point in his career, 35 years old, he's been here his entire career. He's got a family, a young kid, probably doesn't want to go to another city at this point. But he's not going to just, take a lowball offer. It seems like he's being reasonable. He's not as worried about money. He just kind of wants maybe a little bit more term just to have that assurance for, where he's going to be for the rest of his career, and especially for him and his family. I don't see the Blackhawks offering more than a 2-year deal, though. I can see them only offering a 1 or 2 year deal for a couple reasons. Number one, next offseason, next summer, is the expansion draft for Seattle. So the Blackhawks probably want to keep their options open there in terms of who they are going to protect and maybe what moves they make. And then in 2 years, the entry-level contracts for both Kirby Dach and Adam Boqvist are going to be up. And so they probably want to keep their options open there to be able to re-sign them and not have maybe a bad goalie contract weigh them down. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there, how the negotiations are going to be with the Blackhawks and Corey Crawford. I'm going to expect that it's going to be either a 1 or 2 year deal worth somewhere between $3 and $4 million. Some combination of those two things. That's what I would expect. And it seems like all signs are kind of pointing to that. But I'm just calling it as I see it. I could be completely wrong. If you think I'm wrong, feel free to let me know down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Appreciate that as always. But most importantly, stay safe, make good decisions, and I'll see you next time.